I'm Troy, I'm a writer, and I've been writing for, I don't know, like 15 years or something. I've always been writing. I used to want to be a director when I was younger, and so I used to get my cousins to, I used to write scripts for Charmed, like reenact Charmed, the TV show, and get my cousins to act it out. So I was like the location manager, the producer, the director, all that shit. And yeah, and then after that, I think I then realized that kind of like writing is what I wanted to do. I think in year 2 of uni, I always kind of did it as a hobby and kind of just like kind of left it to the side so that I didn't let anybody like kind of touch it, and I think I was very scared to show my work. And then somebody found out, and a director, like kind of director colleague, like in the uni, she kind of came over to me. She was like, "Oh, I heard you're a writer. There's a project that I want to work on. Can you write it for me or help me write it?" And so I was kind of like, "Okay, that's really cool. That's awesome." So that summer I did that, and from then I kind of was like, "Okay, this is really cool. I want to do more of this." And it was a short film, and we worked on it. It was her idea, but it was nice to just be in that kind of like team kind of environment. And then after that, I kind of continued, but I worked in the industry, and yeah, I started as a runner, and then went off, like kind of like went up the ladder. But I was doing kind of production assistant. I was an assistant to a director, an actor, and it was really good. But I think during that time, I was very much kind of like, oh, like I really just want to be on that creative side. And so that was very frustrating, and that was very frustrating for like several years. And also because I think I didn't take myself seriously as a writer. I enjoyed it, but it was very much kind of like, I want to be a writer and not like I am a writer. So I had to kind of transition into that, and that's where I am now. I'm a writer. The transition from wanting to be a writer to realizing I am a writer or believing I was a writer, I think support helped because of the fact that it was my idea, and I had like created the story, and it was quite close to me, and I was kind of like pushing it along, kind of thing. Obviously, it was a team effort, but yeah. So that's and I think when Film London then got involved, I was kind of like, oh my God, I'm actually a creative. And just the way that they talked to me, and it was all kind of really different from, because at that time I was working at a television production company. And so they've like got these really like established writers, and it was kind of my moment to kind of just work on something that I loved, and everybody kind of loved and enjoyed. And yeah, it was that moment where I was kind of like, oh, Film London, I've got funding from them, and I've got a really good director, good producer, I've got a team behind me, kind of thing. I'm a writer. And yeah, and then it just kind of encouraged me to continue. And obviously up until that point, I'd been writing myself, but it's really different when somebody at that kind of professional level kind of believes in you, and takes you on board. I think that process was really important because I think it just kind of gave me that extra confidence, I guess, as a writer, which sometimes can be hard because there's a lot of self-doubt. I think as a creative, you're very much kind of like, am I good enough? And all that stuff. And at that point, I was very much kind of like, oh, I must be good enough if I'm getting funding from London. How would I have felt if I didn't get the funding? I think at that point, because I'd written it and it was at a really good place, I wasn't really thinking about the funding. So Michael had put it forward and submitted it, but in my mind I had kind of like downplayed it and just been like, look, might not get it. So I didn't kind of get my hopes up. And so I think even if I didn't get the funding, I would have still gone on with the project. Yeah, because I was quite used to working on all my stuff, and eventually it would have like, you know, been made or is getting made. But I think I had just downplayed it so that I didn't kind of get my hopes up. And then we got the funding. I remember I was leaving work, I got a call from Michael, and he was like, "Oh, just letting you know that we got funding through, or we got like confirmed." I was like, "This is amazing! This is so good." Yeah. So, but I think going back to your question, if I didn't get the funding, I would have just continued. Support is about two estranged siblings who have to decide to stop treatment on their comatose father. The story came from like myself. I was working on a spec script, and I went into a meeting with Michael, and they were kind of like, "What are you working on?" I was like, "I'm working on this this TV idea," and I kind of told them about that, and then they were kind of like, "Well, do you want to make something?" And I was like, "Yes." And then so I went away, pitched an idea to them. They liked it. They said, "Okay, we'll write a draft." I did, sent it in. A couple of weeks later, went back in to meet with Michael, and he was kind of like, that was a really good moment, because he was kind of, I was very nervous. I was like, he didn't tell me what he thought about it, but I had to come in. So I went in, and he sat me down, and he was like, "Okay, we like it. We like, your writing and all that stuff." And I was kind of like, "Oh, this is great," because Michael also writes as well. So it meant a lot, kind of thing. And then they obviously had like some tweaks, because like you can't be a creative and not like get feedback and have to tweak it. Nothing's ever perfect. And then so I went back, worked on those, and then he came back to me, and he was like, "Okay, well, we think we've got a director that might like it. We're gonna send it off. Do you want to send it off to them?" And I was like, "Yes," and that was Christiana. And then she liked it. She wanted to talk about it and discuss it. So we all sat down and like kind of talked about it in their office. And she had gone through something similar. So it's weird, because I didn't have any death in my family. So it was kind of all from imagination, and these two characters I had worked on before, and I kind of wanted to develop them even more because I thought they were really interesting. And also I love talking about family. But so we sat down, me, Christiana, Michael, and Christiana was like, "Well, something similar has gone through or happened in my life." So I was like, "Oh, that's great, like let's work on it. It means that you're close to it. And I can take everything from that kind of that reality, and put it into this fictional kind of, and that was good, that was great. And then it kind of went from there, and we continued working on it, and it changed a bit. We continued working on it though, and yeah, and now support is here. We got Adela, and that was great. And just the fact that like it had reached someone like her, and I really respected her work, and I thought she had great range as an actress. And obviously then when we got David, that was even, and then obviously when we got David, that was even better. And it was so weird. I stepped on set, and on the first day, and Adela was like, they had started filming, but Adela was kind of like looking quite upset and sad, and I was just kind of like, well, what's going on? Is everybody treating her right? And then obviously I went up to Christiana, and she was like, "Troy, she's just in character." And I was like, okay, because I was just very worried. I was like, well, this, and then I realized how dark the film was and depressing, so obviously she's gonna be in character and she needs time to, anyway, so yeah. David's first scene was really, so he came in, and he was all like really lovely and like, hi, shook my hand and everything. And then 5 minutes later he's on set, and he's doing that scene where he's kind of, it's the most intense scene. And I remember I was walking in the background of it, and could hear the words, and I was choking, like just because it was just so emotional. And it kind of took me back to me writing it, and why I wrote those particular lines, and what I was going through at that time, just to do with stuff with my dad. And so yeah, it was just incredible to hear him, and he just said it way better than I ever like kind of thought. Just so it was, I had literally, I can't even articulate how I feel, but or how I felt. But I just remember walking in the back of the scene and just going, oh my God, that's really touched me. And also just amazing for him to go from 5 minutes before, hey everybody, and then get into that kind of deep and upsetting and quite vulnerable state. So that's like kudos to him, and yeah, and really made it. Yeah, working with Christiana was very easy in the sense that she's just easy to work with. She knows her craft. She's very experienced. She kind of knows what you need from her, and I think she just knows what writers go through, and I think she's very aware of all the other departments, which is very important as a director. She doesn't forget anybody, and I think she was very sensitive to the film, the writing process, and also the drafts as well, because we went through a few drafts because of Film London were quite involved and had comments, and so she was very on board and relaxed, and there was no moment that I kind of was like, oh, does she get it? Because she was totally on board, and that was really important. And then I think just watching her as a director on set was very just wicked. Just the way that she kind of is very subtle with everybody, and she's got this really calm tone, and it's just it means that she's quite approachable and relaxed, and everybody else is relaxed, and everybody else is enjoying it, because I've worked with other directors in the past who are very kind of like egotistic, and you don't really need that on the set, and you don't need that. You just can't really work with that. And I don't like working with people like that. Working with Film London was great, but they were quite full on, and actually I liked it at the time because it just meant that they were very involved and very it felt like they knew the project and they cared about the project. They had quite a lot of notes in terms of like there are stages that they kind of have their input, if that makes sense. But it was also really good because, like I said before, like I was working in admin roles, so it felt really good to have that kind of professionalism and just people in that level to kind of encourage me as a writer, which is, I think, yeah, something that I needed at that time, because it was quite overwhelming, I think. And I've transitioned from my kind of confidence from being a writer then to now, but it was such an overwhelming experience because we had like several, like there was this one meeting with Matimba, who was at the BFI at the time, and all of the board of like Film London, and me, Michael, and Christiana sitting there, kind of like talking about why we wanted funding and all that stuff, and it was just so daunting. It was really, I don't know, yeah, it was just really quite daunting at that time because I was like, oh my God, these people can literally make or break my career, or that's what I thought, I think, and. Yeah, so I was just very much kind of like, and I remember just before, so I just had to talk about like the show and sorry, not the show. I just had to talk about the film and like the story, and I think a couple moments before that meeting, Michael and Christiana was like, "Oh, maybe just like add in this bit," and I was kind of like, "You guys don't get it. My nerves are like up here." But it kind of it went okay. It went well. Yeah, it was a good experience, and it kind of like set me up for then like having to talk in front of like, I don't know, like 200 people for like BAFTA, and yeah. I wouldn't say Support is a black story because I don't see it like that. I think it's just it's a story about a family and siblings and estranged siblings, and they happen to be black, but not in the sense that, you know, that they're just random black people. It's more like this is a relatable story, and this can happen to this can happen to our white counterparts, etc. And it's just relatable and important. I think also important to show us as black people that we have these stories to tell, because we don't really see that. And actually, I think we don't really see drama with black people, black families, and I think that's quite important because I think I grew up watching things like My Wife and Kids and Fresh Prince, and that was very much kind of like comical, and I I was craving seeing films and TV shows about black people or with black characters and in a kind of more serious tone, because we all go through things, and it's just important to show and talk about as well. Right now, I am also working on another short, a play, and I'm working on another spec script or another TV idea. I think I'm literally just thinking about because I usually, the year before the new year, I kind of, or months before the new year, I like have a plan on my whiteboard of like all the projects that I want to work on that year, and I'm just thinking about how I've condensed that down to like just 3 projects, because I think I'm quite ambitious, and I kind of get a bit, I don't know, I kind of want to make everything and do everything like now, and I've learned to just relax and just work on a few projects, and actually so I started off with this short that's I think it's gonna be really good. It's something different, something that I want to talk about, don't necessarily understand, and so that I'm kind of learning as I'm going along, or I have learned as I'm going along. But I'm really excited for that. Over the next few years, I want to continue with my writing, continue with the craft and learning it, which I think is quite important. I want to just continue making more work and making more films and making more, just art, really.